Hi, I'm Calla. My family erased me like I was a mistake they were tired of explaining. They gave everything to my perfect brother, Calder. But it wasn't just favoritism. It was planned. A will rewritten, a quilt hiding a secret clause, and a town too afraid to speak. They sold my name, my home, and tried to sell my silence. What would you do if the people who raised you rewrote your story, without you? The air smelled like damp soil and sweet corn, thick with late summer heat. I hadn't been home in over 6 years, and yet everything about the town felt frozen, like a painting someone forgot to finish. The peeling white paint of the family house hadn't changed. Neither had the silence. I walked up the porch steps with my suitcase trailing behind me, the wheels clicking against each board like a countdown. My mother opened the door just wide enough to nod. No hug, no smile. Just a quick glance at my shoes like they were a problem. "You're here," she said, and stepped aside. Calder didn't bother to greet me. I caught a glimpse of him in the hallway mirror, fixing his tie. Always perfect, always poised. He gave me that signature smirk he wore like cologne. "Well, look who finally decided to come home." "Nice to see you too," I said, but the words hung in the air like dust. Dinner was tense. Forks clinked against porcelain. The TV played low from another room, and no one made eye contact for longer than a second. The roast chicken tasted like cardboard. Or maybe I just couldn't feel anything. "So," Calder said, slicing into his second helping. "Once the paperwork is finalized, I'll probably renovate the guest house first. It'll be part of my inheritance anyway." I blinked. "Your what?" He froze for half a breath, just long enough for me to catch it, then shrugged. "The will, Dad's estate, you know." I looked to Mom. Her hand trembled ever so slightly as she picked up her water glass, but she said nothing. "Is that a joke?" I asked, my voice rising. "No, sweetie," she said finally. "We thought it was best, given the circumstances. You've been gone. You have your life." And Calder doesn't? He lives 2 blocks away and runs a wine bar. I've spent years in New York trying to get this family's voice heard through my gallery work, and now I'm just... What? A footnote? Calder leaned back in his chair, smug as ever. "Come on, Calla, don't be dramatic. It's not like you ever wanted the house." "No," I said, gripping my napkin. "But that doesn't mean I wanted to be erased." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my old room, the ceiling fan clicking overhead like it had never been repaired. The posters from high school still clung to the walls, faded reminders of a girl who once believed family meant safety. Unable to stay still, I rose and opened the cedar chest at the foot of the bed. Inside I found it, Grandma Henrietta's quilt. She'd stitched it by hand, every square a memory. As I unfolded it, something tugged. One of the seams wasn't quite right. I reached inside. There, tucked beneath the patch that read, "June Fireflies and Freedom," was a yellowed envelope. Inside was a folded note. 3 words jumped out at me. Right of first refusal. My pulse raced. It was legal jargon, terms I remembered from when Grandma had explained that every legacy came with a key. I could almost hear her voice. "Your story isn't over even if they try to erase you." She knew. She knew this would happen. Downstairs, the laughter from Calder's post-dinner bourbon with Mom grated against my skin. I returned to bed, quilt tight around my shoulders, heart hammering. At breakfast, Calder acted like nothing had happened. "Sleep well?" he asked with that smile that always meant the opposite. I didn't flinch, I told him. Not then. Not even when Mom handed me a cup of coffee like a peace offering without apology. I just stared at both of them and thought, I will not be invisible this time. That night, long after they'd gone to bed, I returned to the quilt. My hands moved along the seam slowly, searching. And then I found it. A second envelope. It was tucked behind a square stitched with Grandma's initials and the words, "Start here." My fingers trembled as I pulled it free. I didn't know it yet, but my grandmother had left behind more than memories. She left me a weapon. The morning light did little to warm the frost clinging to every corner of the house. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from the kitchen, but it might as well have been poison for all the comfort it brought. I sat at the breakfast table, pretending to sip tea while my eyes scanned the room, searching for cracks that had always been there, but only now revealed themselves. No one mentioned the night before. Calder chuckled at his phone. My father disappeared behind his newspaper like it was body armor. And my mother, Celeste, moved with an effortless grace, slicing oranges with such precision it was almost aggressive. The quilt lay neatly folded at the foot of my bed upstairs, untouched, a trophy of what had been buried, disguised as warmth. "Mom," I said, breaking the silence that had become tradition in our house, "can we talk about the will?" Her knife paused mid-slice, the orange bleeding down the blade. "That's your father's territory," she said, without looking up. "But you knew," I said. My voice didn't rise, but it didn't waver either. "You let him do it." Celeste turned slowly, the faintest twitch in her lip. "It was simpler this way," she murmured. "You had your life. Calder had his path. The family needed clarity." Clarity. What a beautiful lie. My chest tightened, not with surprise, but with the deep ache of confirmation. She hadn't just known, she'd accepted it. She'd chosen silence over me. I didn't say another word. I stood and left the room, her eyes trailing me like shadows that could no longer hide what they truly were. Later that afternoon, I heard Calder on the phone outside the den. His voice was casual, amused. "Yeah, Dad's wrapping up the auction. Henrietta's trunk went yesterday. Some antiques collector in Springfield." My breath caught. I bolted for the attic. Dust swirled in the sunlight, cutting through the narrow window. The trunk, Henrietta's cedar chest, where she'd kept her letters, her pressed flowers, her stories, was gone. Shelves stood half empty, boxes that once held the past now silent and bare. Downstairs, my father didn't even look up when I confronted him. "They're just things," he said, flipping a page in his paper. "Old junk nobody needed." "No," I said, each word slicing through my throat like glass. "They were her," he scoffed. "Don't be dramatic, Calla. It's time to let go of the past." But I couldn't. Not when it was being erased in front of me. I locked myself in my room, the quilt spread out like a battlefield. Every seam, every stitch. She had touched them. They were the closest thing I had left to her voice. Silence had always been the real language of this family, and now I was choking on it. Lying back, I stared at the ceiling, retracing every holiday dinner, every quiet reprimand, every time I was told to be gracious, while Calder basked in the spotlight. I saw it now, not just favoritism, but orchestration. They'd built a narrative without me. But this time, I wouldn't just watch it unfold. That night, long after the house had gone still, I slipped out and drove to the old storage facility on Route 9. The key to the family's estate archive lay inside a unit I wasn't supposed to know existed. I stood before the rusted metal door, flashlight in hand, heart thudding like a warning bell. The label on the unit read, "Henrietta, to sort." I took a deep breath. If they wouldn't tell me the truth, then I'd force the truth to speak. The padlock clicked open with a rusted groan, louder than I expected in the stillness of the warehouse lot. The late afternoon sun cut long shadows across the gravel, and the scent of cedar and faint lavender spilled out as I rolled the storage door open. My pulse thudded in my ears. Somewhere inside, she was still speaking to me. The unit was cramped with dusty furniture and cracked picture frames, but in the far corner, half hidden beneath a moth-eaten bedsheet, sat the trunk, Henrietta's trunk. Exactly like I remembered it. Brass hinges, a small dent on the left side from the time I tripped and knocked it over when I was 9. 16 years ago, lying on the front lawn with her, the quilt pulled over our legs, her voice tracing stars in the sky. "See that one?" she said. "Orion, a warrior. You've got him in you too, Calla." My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. The velvet interior still held her scent, a mix of lavender and tobacco. Buried beneath a stack of notebooks and knitting patterns was a smaller box. Velvet, midnight blue, its corners frayed with age. I opened it. Inside was a sealed envelope labeled in her delicate handwriting, "My true wishes, H.W." I didn't breathe. I unfolded the parchment slowly, each word slicing cleaner than the last. She'd written a new will, by hand, dated 3 weeks after the official one Calder bragged about. My name was there. Maeve's too. Co-heirs, equal standing. She wrote about the house, about the quilt, about the claws. right of first refusal tied to it, designed to protect something. Me, maybe. Us. And then came the final knife. I have reason to believe this version may be disregarded by those I no longer trust. Dad had known. He'd locked this away, buried her words under old furniture and time. I sat back on the cold cement floor, the letter still in my hand, the world spinning. I wasn't just erased. I'd been deliberately silenced. I drove back in silence, the will folded neatly beside me like a passenger. When I pulled into the driveway, Thayer's car was already there. Of course he was here. He stood on the porch, arms crossed, trying too hard to look casual. "Calla," he said, eyes flicking down to the paper I clutched. "We need to talk." "Not now." "Yes, now, please." His voice cracked in that practiced way I used to fall for. "Look, I know things are tense. You think?" "Don't do this," he said. "This family, it's fragile." I laughed, bitter. "They've been fragile my whole life, but only for him." He stepped closer. "You'll burn it all down. The estate, the name, everything your grandmother tried to preserve. They destroyed mine years ago," I snapped. "I'm just returning the favor." For a moment, the porch was silent but charged, like lightning in the bones of the wood. He looked at me, really looked at me, and something flickered in his face. Not guilt, not regret. Fear. "You don't know what you're getting into, Cal." "No," I said, "but you do, and you're still standing on the wrong side." I left him on the steps, walked inside without another word. My mother's voice drifted from the kitchen. "Is she still playing detective?" I didn't answer. I climbed the stairs, shut my door, and sat with the document under lamplight. My hands moved mechanically, photocopying every page, placing the original in an envelope marked with today's date. I tucked it inside a hollowed book on the shelf. Something she taught me: hide what matters in plain sight. The rest of the night blurred. I couldn't sleep. My mind moved like a machine, gears turning faster than I could process. There would be backlash. They'd spin it, deny it, bury it again if I let them. But I wasn't the girl who left town all those years ago, clutching a broken engagement and a hollow heart. I had something now. I opened my laptop, typed in the name of the best probate attorney in Charleston. They wanted me gone. I was about to make sure I stayed exactly where I belonged. The rain started around midnight, tapping against my window like a warning I hadn't earned the right to ignore. I lay in the dark, sheets twisted around my legs, staring at the ceiling. Thayer's voice still echoed, curling under my skin like smoke. He'd looked at me like I was the one setting fire to the family. Maybe I was. I used to dream of marrying him in this town, on the very courthouse lawn where I now considered filing a motion against his father's estate. Funny how love curdles into irony when truth is all you've got left. I was no longer trying to prove my place here. I was hunting for what was stolen from me. The message from Olivia arrived just past 1 a.m., short and sharp. "Can we talk? I have something you need to hear." I didn't sleep. By morning, I was already at the diner. She walked in with her hair pinned up, shoulders squared like armor. She didn't order coffee. "He wanted me gone," Olivia said, cutting to the bone. "Calder, your brother. He came to my work one afternoon and said I was dragging Thayer down, that he'd never be more than a schoolteacher if he stayed tied to someone like me." I flinched, not at her words, but at how plausible they were. That felt like Calder. Image first, people second. Always. He told me to leave quietly, said if I didn't, he'd make sure I never worked in this town again. She slid a folded paper across the table. A letter. Thayer's handwriting. I scanned it, my hands trembling slightly as I read the confession I never expected to see. Thayer had doubted his place here, had written about escaping the shadow of expectations soaked in money and secrets. He'd wanted out, years ago, and Calder had clipped that thread without ever letting him know someone else had tied the scissors. "Why tell me this now?" I asked, eyes narrowed. "Because I didn't deserve what he did. Neither do you." Outside, the clouds had thickened again, the sky growing darker than it should have by noon. When I got home, the envelope was already under my door. No stamp, no name. Just plain, thick paper and words written in blocky, jagged script. "Stop digging. Some truths should stay buried. Or you will be." I read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't shake, but my breath did. Fear wasn't unfamiliar, but this was targeted. Someone knew how close I was getting, and they were scared enough to warn me. I lit the fireplace in my bedroom, watched the paper curl and blacken in the flame. But I didn't let it disappear entirely. I scooped the ashes into a glass jar and placed it by the window. A reminder. They knew where I was, so I'd show them I wasn't moving. Maeve didn't flinch when I told her. She paced, muttered something about locking the back door, and finally said, "You're not backing down. Not now. We'll find out who's behind this. Start with Calder's people, his donors, City Hall, that country club he parades through like a damn peacock." We pulled out laptops, notes, the copy of Henrietta's will. But I couldn't stop glancing at my phone. Olivia's last message blinked back at me. "There's more, but it's not safe to say it here. Meet me tomorrow." I lay in bed that night, eyes dry but restless. Rain still fell outside, muffling the hum of tires. I got up to close the blinds. A car sat across the street, engine running, lights off, and it didn't move. The folding chairs creaked as I stepped into the community center. Every eye turned toward me, some startled, some ashamed, most pretending not to see me at all. I could feel the weight of Calder's influence in that room like humidity before a thunderstorm. A planning meeting for Henrietta's memorial had somehow turned into a silent retreat. No flowers ordered, no readings prepared, no date. I cleared my throat, walked straight to the front. The old wood-paneled wall behind me hummed with quiet defiance. "I heard the service was canceled," I said, "or postponed indefinitely, as you so carefully worded it." No one spoke. I grew up in this town. I sat in this hall every summer, listening to Henrietta tell stories about constellations and compassion. She taught your kids piano. She brought casseroles when your husbands left. And now you let Calder erase her because it's convenient? A few people shifted uncomfortably. I kept going. If you let him silence this tribute, you're not just betraying her. You're complicit in erasing everything she stood for. And me. That last line landed like a dropped glass. I saw something shift, guilt cracking through the veil of polite indifference. Good. After the meeting, I walked straight to Mayor Langley's office. I didn't knock. He flinched like he'd seen a ghost. "You sent the letter," I said. Not a question. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Look, Calla, it wasn't personal." "No?" I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Then say that again." He froze. "You did it at Calder's request, didn't you?" A beat. Then, "He asked me to. Said you were stirring up trouble, digging where you shouldn't. We just wanted to avoid chaos." "By threatening me?" He rubbed his temple. "It was business. A bad call, okay?" I stopped the recording and slid the phone back into my pocket. "I'll let you know if I decide to press charges, or just ruin you politically. Either way, thanks for the confession." The next morning, Maeve found me in the kitchen, eyes red. "They shut it down," she said. "The memorial." I nodded. "I know." I picked up my phone and dialed the local paper. When the reporter answered, I didn't hesitate. "My name is Calla Whitmore. I have something your readers need to know. My brother, Calder Whitmore, used his influence to cancel a community memorial. Why? Because my sister dared to speak up. Because he couldn't control it." The story ran that afternoon. It spread online faster than I expected. Comments flooded in. People remembered Henrietta. People asked questions. The tone shifted. That night, Calder waited for me outside the town library. He stood half in shadow, hands in his coat pockets like he owned the air. "You crossed a line," he said. "So did you." I pulled the envelope from my coat and pressed it into his hand. "Here's a copy of the mayor's confession. Insurance." His jaw tightened. "You wouldn't." "I will," I said. "Next time I won't just leak it. I'll bury you with it." He didn't speak, just turned and walked away, steps sharp on the pavement. But for the first time, his shoulders slumped. The attic air was thick with dust and silence, a stillness that only old secrets dared to occupy. I sat cross-legged beside a crumbling box marked Household Henrietta. Inside, buried beneath faded recipes and holiday cards, I found a stack of documents, medical records, receipts, handwritten notes, and something didn't sit right. I scanned the last few months of Henrietta's life. Medications listed that I didn't remember. Appointments skipped with no explanation. One form dated 2 weeks before her passing noted a decline that didn't match the woman I spoke to just days before she slipped into silence. She had been forgetful, but lucid, loving, present. I ran my fingers over the edge of the folder, my chest tightening. Someone had erased parts of her, before she was even gone. When I showed Maeve the papers, she stared at them like they might burn. Calder had power of attorney, Calla. He made the decisions. He didn't even tell me half of them. We drove out to see Dr. Chalmers, the physician who'd overseen Henrietta's care. He opened the door with a tired look, one that deepened when he saw the folder in my hands. "I shouldn't talk to you without a lawyer," he said. "But you will," I said, "because you remember her. And I think you feel what I feel. That something about her ending wasn't right." He hesitated, then softly. He asked me not to overcomplicate her diagnosis, said she wouldn't want interventions. But I wasn't sure, and I didn't push. "You knew," I whispered. "She might have had more time," he admitted. We left without another word. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, but something snapped inside me, quiet and deadly. That night, I returned to the estate files. I dug deep, every folder, every ledger. It was almost an accident when I saw the bank letter, a congratulatory notice for a $250,000 loan, issued in my name. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But then came the account routing, the signature lines, the notarized documents, all forged, all perfect. Except they weren't. Because Calder was arrogant. He thought I'd never look. The loan had funded one of his flashy garage expansions, now sitting at the edge of town like a monument to theft. I visited the bank, made a quiet scene, walked out with every legal photocopy I needed. I could still hear Calder's words from years ago. "Family is meant to help family." I almost laughed. Now I would help him destroy himself, with the truth. Later that evening, I met with an attorney. Her voice was calm, precise. I liked her immediately. "We're not suing yet," I said. "We're building the cage, slowly." As I walked into Henrietta's room, Quilt folded in my arms, I laid it across my lap and pulled out the highlighted clause in the estate packet. My hands didn't shake. If Calder wanted war, I'd fight it his way. But with armor he never saw coming. They stopped looking me in the eye. It started with the cashier at the corner grocery, the one who used to sneak me extra cookies as a kid. She pretended not to hear when I greeted her. Then came the silence at the post office, the glances from neighbors that slipped between pity and fear. Someone had been whispering long before I noticed. And Calder had never needed a loud voice, just a persistent one. Maeve was the hardest to watch. She moved through the house like a ghost, quieter with each passing day. Every time I asked what was wrong, she smiled like it was nothing. But she was lying through her teeth, and I could see it in her hands, shaking, hidden under sleeves, clutching her phone like a lifeline. That night I pushed. "What did he do to you, Maeve?" She tried to wave me off again, but I grabbed her wrist gently. "I can't protect you if I don't know." Her eyes welled up, and she looked away as if the words might hurt more when spoken. "He said if I didn't stop helping you, he'd make sure I'd never rent again, that my credit would vanish, that I'd just disappear." I froze. "He threatened your life?" "No," she whispered, "but he didn't have to." My stomach twisted. This wasn't family. This was extortion in a cardigan. The next morning it got worse. Maeve stood in the front yard holding a pale yellow envelope like it might combust. Her fingers trembled as she handed it to me, an eviction notice, effective immediately. The house we grew up in, the one Henrietta had left to us in every memory if not on paper, was no longer hers. Calder had filed paperwork claiming sole ownership. Attached was a lease agreement Maeve had never seen before, backdated, notarized, forged. We raced to the courthouse to contest it, but it was too late. The locks had already been changed. She broke down on the curb, knees to pavement, sobbing like something sacred had been stolen. Because it had. I sat beside her, rage boiling just beneath the surface. You took her home because you couldn't take mine. That was never enough for you, was it? I turned toward the house, Calder's smug power oozing from behind drawn blinds, and swore he wouldn't sleep easy in it again. That night, word spread fast. Calder was holding a press conference at the church steps, painting me as unhinged, dangerous, hell-bent on tearing the family apart. I didn't interrupt. I watched from across the street with Maeve by my side, her hood up, her arms folded tight. They believe him, she said quietly. They won't for long, I said. He gestured passionately to the cameras, feeding them rehearsed lines. I looked at Maeve. Let him speak. I'm almost ready to make him listen. And when I turned back toward the church, the smile that curved my lips wasn't kind. The motel walls were thin, and the silence thicker than ever. Maeve slept with her back turned to the door, a worn hoodie pulled up to shield herself from the world, or maybe from herself. I hadn't slept in 2 days. The headlines kept flashing in my mind like gunshots. Estranged daughter spirals, accused of faking will. Former fiancé speaks out. Calla was always difficult. And the worst of all, from a local Facebook group with too many followers and too few facts. She's not right in the head. That whole family should have left her in Chicago. It was like drowning in whispers. That afternoon, while I was glued to my screen, scrolling through comments that cut deeper than knives, Maeve was rummaging through boxes in the trunk of her car. The sun beat down on her, but she moved like someone with a purpose for the first time in weeks. Then she stopped. She held up a manila folder like it was glowing. It's here, she said. The co-ownership deed, signed by Henrietta, notarized, before Calder moved back. I snatched it from her hands, scanned the ink, the dates, the seal. My heart slammed against my ribs. This proves it, I whispered. He never had the right to evict you, not legally. We called the lawyer immediately. We can file an emergency injunction, he said. It'll take a day to process, but we can stop him. For the first time in weeks, something inside me stood still. Not from shock, this time from solid ground. The calm didn't last. That evening, the Gazette ran a front-page editorial, full color, Calder's smug face in the corner. A statement from his lawyer. Calla James is engaging in a calculated effort to defraud her family. We have reason to believe she forged multiple legal documents and is manipulating her sister for sympathy. It was accompanied by a blurry photo of me walking out of the probate office. At the grocery store later, a woman I went to high school with shoved past me and muttered, "Leech." I sat in my car, keys untouched in the ignition, hands clenched around the steering wheel. The windows fogged. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. They think shame is a weapon, I said aloud, but I'm still here. Later that night, there was a knock at the motel door. Not the sheriff, not a reporter. An older woman in a floral blouse, eyes rimmed with age and something else. Remorse. I'm sorry, she said, voice shaking. I was your grandmother's housekeeper. I left right after the funeral. Couldn't take what Calder was doing. But I remember things. About the quilt, the will, the fights. I heard him yelling at her the night before she passed. He was furious she'd changed it. Maeve stared, stunned. I'll testify, the woman said. I should have come forward sooner. I reached for her hand. You're here now. That's what matters. She nodded. Henrietta trusted you. She told me. Calla sees things others choose not to. By morning, I was dressed in black. The mayor's campaign fundraiser was hosted at Town Hall. A banner stretched above the door. Charleston forward. People were inside laughing, clinking wine glasses, pretending we didn't exist. I didn't knock. I walked through the doors, past stunned faces and confused stares, straight to the mic on stage. Calder turned, mid-toast, the wine glass frozen near his lips. You've heard his version, I said into the microphone. Now you'll hear mine. When I stepped out of Town Hall, I half expected to be swallowed whole by the air outside. But the world didn't erupt. It didn't cheer. It didn't boo. It just held its breath. The crowd parted without words. Some looked away. Others held my gaze, and one woman, a stranger, placed her hand to her chest and gave me a quiet nod. Not of agreement, not even sympathy, just recognition. It wasn't about winning. It was about being heard. I walked back to the motel with my shoes scuffing concrete like they were made of lead. I didn't speak, neither did Maeve. There was a kind of holy silence between us, the kind that only forms when you've walked through fire together and come out on the same side. By morning, the tide turned. Maeve's documents and the housekeeper's testimony made their way to the county attorney's office. A formal investigation was announced. Calder's bank records were subpoenaed. His political campaign went radio silent. The billboard near the library that once read "Integrity You Can Trust" was spray-painted overnight with one word: liar. The church announced it would reinstate Henrietta's memorial, citing community sentiment. No mention of me, but I didn't need the credit. I needed the silence to break. Maeve and I sat in the back pew of that church the day of the service. Henrietta's photo sat beside a bouquet of wild magnolias, the ones she always said bloomed best after the storm. No speeches, no dramatics, just a piano, a soft prayer, and a room full of people who finally showed up. Maeve didn't say much that week, until one night when we were folding her things. "I'm moving to Asheville," she said. "Kelly, our cousin, offered me her spare room for as long as I need. I need clean air, clean people." I nodded. "You deserve both." She smiled faintly. "I'm not suing Calder. Not because he deserves peace, but because I do." She left a few days later. No long hugs, just a wave from the window, her face pressed against the glass as the bus pulled away. I wasn't ready for what came next. I found my mother in the garden, trimming dead petals like nothing had happened. The house looked smaller now, as if everything inside it had caved inward. "You came," she said, not looking up. "I didn't come to fight," I replied. "I came because I need to finish this. For me." She set the shears down, hands trembling just enough for me to notice. "I was scared," she said. "Henrietta was strong. You're strong. I'm not." "You were silent," I said. "You watched him do it, and you let him." She blinked once, twice. "I told myself I was keeping the peace." "You were keeping your comfort." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. Neither did I. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "Good," I answered, "because I'm not offering it, but I needed you to hear me say it, out loud." When I left, I didn't look back. She didn't ask me to stay. 3 months passed. I moved into a small rental outside Asheville, not far from Maeve. I painted the walls warm shades of rust and gold. I planted mint by the window. I unpacked slowly, deliberately, each object a vote for the life I was building. And one afternoon, I unfolded a new quilt. I'd made it myself, stitched with scraps from Henrietta's aprons, Maeve's flannel shirts, a strip from my old college hoodie. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. A postcard arrived in the mail the next week. It had no return address, just a photograph of the old town square and a single sentence. "Thank you for saying what the rest of us never dared to." I pinned it beside the quilt. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It lingers. It echoes. It waits until you're quiet enough to hear it. I poured myself a cup of tea, watched the sunset, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was trespassing in my own story. Life doesn't always hand you justice in one clean blow. It hands you choices, silence, and moments when standing up feels like standing alone. But if this story has taught me anything, it's this. Truth has weight, and when carried with courage, it can shake even the most immovable walls. I didn't win every battle. I lost time, people, comfort, but I reclaimed something no one else could define for me: my name, my voice, and the right to speak it out loud. Maybe you've felt erased before. Maybe your family, your town, or even your own doubts told you to sit down, stay quiet, play nice. But listen to me. Your story matters. Not because it's loud, but because it's yours. And when you finally decide to tell it, the world may not clap. But someone out there will finally hear it and know they're not alone. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to fight to be heard? Has your truth ever made others uncomfortable? Share your thoughts below. Drop a comment with a 1 if this story spoke to your heart, or tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't connect with it, I'd still love to hear why. What did it make you feel? And hey, if you believe in stories that challenge silence, honor resilience, and carry truth like fire in the dark. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's more to come, and I promise you, each one will make you feel